I have Ellie Ragland with us here today. She's a professor, PhD in Romance languages, teaches critical theory, psychoanalytic theory in the English department, where she also teaches comparative literature, including world literature. She is the author of over 100 articles, has lectured nationally and internationally at over 100 universities and scholarly gatherings. She has held an NEH grant, a humanities fellowship at the University of Illinois, and has received other honors, including the Missouri Gold Chalk Award for Excellence in Teaching. Her books include Rabelais and Panurge, a psychological approach to literary character, Jacques Lacan and the philosophy of psychoanalysis, Essays on the pleasure of death, A logic of sexuation from Aristotle to Lacan, Jacques Lacan and the logic of structure, Lacanian structures and language in psychoanalysis. Her current book is on hysteria, structure, discourse, logic, fantasy, and symptom. She edited and co-edited books including Lacan and the Subject of Language, revived in 2014 with Mark Brecher, critical essays on Jacques Lacan and Lacan, the Topologically Speaking, co-edited with Dragan Milovanovic. She edited the official Lacanian journal, Newsletter of the Freudian Field, for 8 years and published 8 volumes from 1987 to 1994. She now edits Return, a journal of Lacanian studies, of which 7 volumes have appeared from 2003 to 2014, and the 8th is ready to come out. She reads regularly for university presses, journals, promotions, and has also taught at the University of Paris in the Department of Psychoanalysis from 1994 to 1995. She is a member of the New Lacanian School and of the World Association of Psychoanalysis. Ellie, thank you so much for being here with us today. Welcome to LacanCast, the United States Lacanian Voice.
I'm honored to be here.
Oh, good. I would like to ask you, how did your encounter with psychoanalysis happen? With psychoanalysis of Lacanian orientation?
Well, first of all, I did my PhD at the University of Michigan. So the University of Michigan was very clinically, psychoanalytically oriented then, and was very Jewish, and everybody that I knew was Jewish and in psychoanalysis. So I went into psychoanalysis as my Jewish boyfriend wanted me to. And then I did my PhD dissertation. I had on my committee somebody who had been analyzed by Freud in Vienna. And that was a great honor to me.
Wow.
And I did my dissertation on psychology and literature on François Rabelais and the character Panurge. So I'd never heard of Lacan then, but I worked on literature and psychology and how readers interpret the book, that it's not just what the author means for us to read. And then when in 1972, one of my friends went to Paris for a year, and she went to Lacan seminars, and she bought a Cri in 2 volumes at that time. And she couldn't read it or understand it, and she threw it on my desk and said, "Here, you work on literature and psychology. You should study this because you're interested. I can't understand a word that man says. I didn't understand him in his seminars. I don't read these books. Here, you do it." So I started reading Lacan, the Rome Discourse, in 1972, and I was overwhelmed. I was nauseated, I was dizzy, I was sick, but I couldn't quit reading. I would just get a glass of water from time to time and couldn't quit reading. I couldn't put it down. And then I just started reading Lacan in 1972 because I had a PhD in French, even though I later got hired into an English department, which I'll mention in a minute. But I completely worked in French because I had a PhD in it. I had the ability to start reading Lacan that my colleagues didn't have because most of them didn't know French. So then I started writing on Lacan. In 1975, I got some things published in journals with Christophe, Irigaray, and all of us were at the beginning doing something new. And with new journals that were coming out, like Substance at that moment, and things like that. And then eventually I got picked up by, when I gave a paper, I was invited to SUNY Buffalo and to give lectures on Lacan. And one of the students there linked me up with Stuart Schneiderman, who had just come back to the United States from having been analyzed by Lacan. And Stuart Schneiderman, I was writing a book on Lacan by then, Jacques Lacan and the Philosophy of Psychoanalysis. And I was writing it, and he wanted to read a chapter, and I sent it to him, and he was so excited, and he immediately told Jacques-Alain Miller about me. And then we put together, my ex-husband and I, then my husband, we put together the conference that brought Jacques-Alain Miller for the first time to North America, to Canada, at the University of Ottawa, which is a bilingual university.
Yes.
And he was speaking in French, and everybody wanted him to stay from 7 to 1, not just from, 7 to 9:30. And so he just stayed. He sat down and he stayed and he talked to us. And suddenly he said, well, I've been speaking English now for a while. I didn't know that. His English is fabulous. And so he asked to read my book. It hadn't come out then. And he said to me about my manuscript, it's amazing what you've done with what you had. And Michel to read. And Michel de Certeau read it for my promotion, read my book, and he said, it's a book qui fera date, which will be epoch-making. So it was an introduction of Lacan, Lacan studies into the United States I made with that book. Only one English book on Lacan had come out before. That was Schneiderman's collection of case histories that he had translated, but it wasn't on basically Lacan's teaching. So that's how I started, and the response to my book was that I became a Lacanian superstar. I was invited to Australia, India, all over the United States, and I would go and people would say things like, how can you say what you're saying? It goes against everything we think. You can't be saying it. And I said, well, they said, why do people invite you? And I said, I don't know, but they invite me every weekend. They must want to hear this. And so gradually, I started publishing in the newsletter of the Freudian Field, and Jacques-Alain Miller was very supportive of my book. Judith Miller did an interview with me for L'An on that book. And it was published in 5 languages, Japanese, German, French, and all different languages. And still, 30 years later, that particular book is still making royalties, even though it was never a textbook. But a lot of institutes of psychoanalysis use it as a textbook. I don't agree with that book anymore. Of course, I went on and wrote many more and changed and followed Miller's teaching, and he's guided us all in a clarity through Lacan that is miraculous. I mean, I don't know how many people know this, but Lacan put him as co-author of the seminars because he did establish them and help write them. So Miller's role has always been much larger than people actually would know. So then I just dedicated my life to Lacan. From 1972 on, I simply... That was, I mean, of course, I read all the other people, Derrida, Deleuze, Christophe, Foucault. When they came out, I could read them in French. And we had semiotic circles, and we had groups that were unlike what we have now, the Lacan Cartel, which is official and very serious study of Lacan. But we had all these groups where they were studying all these post-structuralist things. And of course, we insisted Lacan's not a post-structuralist, but they wanted to include him in their groups. Then my interest in Lacanian analysis grew. I mean, I had three American psychoanalysts analyses. One was somebody who was very famous, but who ended up his life in kind of scandal. I won't mention his name, but he was famous. And I started my analysis with a Parisian analyst, whose name I won't mention, but who's very well known, in 1991, and I'm still in analysis with that person. And then I've kept writing all these articles on Lacan, all these books on Lacan. I'm writing the book on hysteria in the fall. I have it half done. I hope to finish it in the fall. So, does that start to answer
It's
your
amazing
question?
when we start, right? We can't stop, right? Lacanian psychoanalysis is just something that when it gets to us, it's just, we can't stop.
For life. You're taken. I just met with a student, and she said, "Oh, I'm so sad you're not teaching in the fall. I want to go on with Lacan, and I'm graduating after the fall." So I have so many students who follow me from university to university and continue taking the courses, because if it clicks with them, then they're hooked.
Yes. And how did you become a member of the World Association of Psychoanalysis?
I was just somebody, I think it was either 2009 or 2011, I think 2011. I just got word by email that an outside nominating committee had nominated me to be in the World of Psychoanalysis, and I never knew who was on the committee. I don't think my analyst was. It was just an outside committee who knew of my work and my speaking, and I had spoken, and by that point, many times in Paris, and had spoken in French, and so I was known as somebody who was really
recognition for your work that you have done here, because it's the place where it's so hard to establish psychoanalysis.
So hard. I
Yes.
mean, I was just on a committee last week with a young woman who's trying to talk about a psychotic writer. He's so clearly psychotic, and explain it by brain theory, because she thinks everything happens, the way they study brain theory and psychology, by like a trauma to the head or something like that. And she put me on her committee because she'd had a course with me, but she wanted to do the traditional psychoanalysis, as it's developing in the USA.
Mm-hmm.
And the psychologist in the committee finally just said to her and to the literary critic, I have to agree with everything that this Lacanian is saying. I didn't know I could agree with the Lacanian, but I agree with her point of view on this book, not what you're saying. So even the hardcore brain psychologist, cognitive researcher, could agree when he heard something about symptoms and suffering and writing.
Well, that's wonderful. That is wonderful. What are your current projects? It seems like you're unstoppable.
I just finished writing an article on Jacques Lacan's capitalist discourse for a volume on psychoanalysis and politics. And I am writing something right now, trying to hurry up and do it before I leave for Ghent and then Paris, on the imaginary for an encyclopedia on sexuality and gender. But my main project right now is to get out the next issue of the journal and then to carry on writing my book on hysteria.
On hysteria, so. Yes. And you started with philosophy, literature, and then it just grew, and I can see through, your curriculum how it goes through until you get to your work that you're doing now, that is hysteria.
Yes, I am a hysteric according to leukemia diagnosis, and I've written enough articles on hysteria to be collected in a collection of essays. But this book on hysteria is something that my analyst is very supportive of, and hopes that I can broaden out our understanding. Practicing has changed my life. I mean, Lacan changed my life, Miller changed my life. Then practicing psychoanalysis is such a major change, because once you practice, I mean, you can never see Lacan the same way again. It changes you so profoundly. And I've analyzed some hysterics. Some of the people I thought were hysteric turned out to be psychotic. And, of course, we have the difficulty and the time that it takes to make a diagnosis.
Correct.
But I'm rearranging my bookshelves right now, getting rid of the books that I read all my life and putting all my Lacan books there and all my seminars and all the ongoing seminars of the L'Orientation Lacanienne. So I'm not going to do anything else until I die.
Right. It's just something that we have to keep doing.
Well, we have to keep doing it, because my department is suspicious of what I'm doing. They don't know. They think it must be something about penis envy. They really have no idea. And my students just, after about 3 weeks, they're lost, and then they just click, because finally Lacan's so hard and abstract, but at the base, he's so humble and human.
Yes.
And that clicks.
Yes. Just his style of writing, it's something that you have to have the desire to understand, or even keep reading without understanding him. Because
yes, I keep reading.
If you keep reading, at one time it's gonna click.
This is what happened.
And if a person keeps doing their analysis and then keeps reading, and then it's like, oh, that's what it was. When he says this is what he means, right? Because it has,
exactly.
you have to go through the couch. There is.
Well, finally, you're so right. And the thing about continuing to read, I mean, it took years for the sexuation graphs to click and the K-void graph, but suddenly one day, I mean, Lacan said, for us, there's no way out but in, and we have to keep going, even if it takes 10 years. And, even after 10 years, we still do. There's something else is happening with this teaching.
Right. And up to this day, we still have open questions, and that's what I like about it. It seems like every time we go to a congress or to meetings or gatherings of psychoanalysts, there is never one answer. It's always an open question. As we had in Paris, the Congress about the real, right? We're still talking about it.
Of course.
Right?
And we'll carry on.
We go, we gather, we listen, we discuss, and here come more questions.
Yes. Well, I will say that I do honor my university for allowing me to teach Lacan, not forcing me to teach at the same time Derrida and Deleuze and so forth and so on. I do respect them for that, and they have honored me. I didn't put it in my bio bib I gave you, but they have given me the Middlebush Chair, endowed chair, and so they have some respect at least for the CV. I haven't had time to build a website, and I'm not computer savvy. I don't know how to build one, but I haven't even had time to hire somebody to do it, because once you get into the Lacan work, I mean, I tell my students there is no such thing as going out to lunch with somebody in the Lacan world. It's a working lunch. I mean, you're carrying on building something.
Right.
It's a new view of knowing, being, sexuality, sexuation, everything. It's as Miller says in what he gave to Buenos Aires, in the 8th Congress, he says, it's a new discourse. And it is.
It is. And we are bringing it here. You are doing such a great work on bringing and establishing psychoanalysis inside a university. I mean...
Well, I have to learn Spanish. That's another thing I'm going to do. It's not enough to know. I know German, so I can read Freud, and of course I know French, which was the gift I had to help me along. But now I intend to seriously study Spanish starting in the fall when I don't have to teach, as well as write the book on hysteria. The book I just finished is really, it's on, I say the logic of structure, but I take very seriously what Miller says that myth is Lacan, that structure is Lacan's myth, and Lacan, the late Lacan, saying structure is topological. So all of my books are about basically topological, I mean all of my chapters are about topological Lacan, like the structure of the object A, the structure of the bride, the topological structure. So I'm talking always about topology in that book. So I'm hoping that it will be accessible to people. I know there's tremendous interest in the book, Topologically Speaking. It now, 20 years later, is still making royalties, and the one that Dragon and I co-edited. And so people are continue to be very interested in that book.
Oh, that's wonderful. So how can the LacanCast audience know more about your work? You said you don't have a website.
I don't, and the dean told me the other day that he will have one built for me, that they hire people on the campus just to do that. So again, during the summer, I think that one will be built.
Okay.
But if you Google me, half of my productions, half of my articles are mentioned, and half of my books. Not all. Okay. But if you Google me on academia.edu, you can find that. Also, a student, I gave a paper in California last summer, and a student introduced me. She knew all these things about me. And I said, how did you know those things? They didn't ask for a CV. And she said, oh, well, if you just look up Ellie Ragland, and there's one that says document, it has your CV. It's actually 3 years old. It's not up to date. I don't know who put it there or how they got it there. But there is a CV under Ellie Ragland called Document that also says, because, a lot of people just write books, a book every 2 years, book every 3 years, and I've spread my books out. But the articles, I just keep going with articles, and sometimes they'll be from a series of lectures, and I just don't stop and make them as a collection, because I'm doing, say, another collection that's collecting things from Marie-Hélène Bruce, Pierre-Gilles Guégan, Éric Laurent, all the well-known Lacanians. And I want to put that material forward so that North Americans, as untutored as they are, have a chance to read these brilliant people. I think it's so wonderful what Latin America is doing for Lacan. I mean, South America is the one that's building Lacan for us for the future, along with all the efforts in Paris and France.
Well, Ellie, thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing your, great work and your path through Lacanian psychoanalysis. I can't wait to have you back here and to talk about to talk more about your book that you're gonna publish. It was a pleasure to have you at our LacanCast. Thank you.
Thank you, Renata. Bye.
Bye.